our regular Board of Education meeting to order. If we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Chris, our mission statement.
All right. At Richmond Community Schools, we provide a quality education that empowers students in a global community. I'll go ahead and do roll call. Can you hear me, Margaret?
Sure can.
Okay. Sandra Fortuna.
Here.
Angela Pacito.
Here.
Sherry Zuby.
Here.
Kyle Simmons.
Here.
Jessica Sexton.
Here.
Margaret Telto.
Here.
And I'm Christine Furto. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Other than I just want to point out tonight, we have 2 public comments in our meeting. The first one, it will be just for the return to learning plan that the board has to approve every month. And then the second one in the meeting will be our regular public comment for any questions other than the return to learning plan. So it has been moved and supported. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the consent agenda as presented in the attached documentation.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Mr. Walmsley?
The only discussion that we have is there's some reassignments of personnel. Heidi Manguni is now returned to Elementary Dean of Students effective today. Caitlin Shimileski has moved from the GSRP Associate Teacher to the GSRP Lead Teacher. And Deborah Osterlin was a successful bidder and is moving from the middle school assistant cook to the elementary assistant cook. You can see the current positions that we have posted to fill.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, our bond update.
Okay, actually tomorrow the bond bid documents will go online for the middle school, high school, and the food service. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the official name, but the food service equipment and so forth. We also have a fire alarm system that will go out to bid. Those bonds will be due in mid-November. Around the 17th, we'll be looking at review of those bond bids. And then those will come to you in a presentation, the second meeting in November, to give you a big picture of what you'll be approving. Pretty much at least 2 times what you approved for the elementary school. It's going to be a substantial figure, and those will come to you for the December 14th final board meeting. Today we finished up the new doors on the high school. If you've looked around, you see a lot of, they're a gray composite door. That was from the safety and security grant that was applied for, it's probably been 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And we were able to hold off and use the dollars for that to replace the high school doors, which many of them were they were very bad. They needed to be replaced. And though that was written and approved prior to us doing the bond evaluation or the bond being put to the voters. So this is prior to that. Other than that, the work is continuing on the elementary school. The bricks are going up, so it's starting to look like a new building there. So
Yeah, it does look good. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Moving on, first presentation, the extended COVID-19 learning plan, section 98A for the 2020-21 school year.
As part of the state budget that was approved, the legislators and the governor signed into law section 98A, which requires districts to evaluate their COVID learning plan and how they're delivering instruction every month. And in that review, boards need to consider a couple items. One is, are we going to continue as is? Are we going to look at beginning making changes? The second is to gather parent input on the plan. And the third is to look at what's the two-way communication as described by the law. What's the percentage of two-way communication? So I'm going to share with you the document that was created for all Macomb County schools. You can see it here in front of you and on the screen in the auditorium. These are the three aspects. This was primarily put in place when districts didn't give parents a choice, and they either were all virtual and there was not a whole lot of discussion. And so it was an opportunity for the district to get input from their parents to see whether they should be doing some type of options that might be more suitable to them. So as you go through this plan, this template will be presented to you each month, and we'll keep adding on to it. But the first one is to look at how the delivery is being done. My recommendation and the administrator's recommendation is to continue providing a synchronous virtual option for families in both pre-K, at the elementary school, at the middle school, and at the high school. Now, the way this template is designed, you can see there's sections that say add additional comments. That would be as if the board wanted to look at changing the plan, we would begin adding those comments in there, give the administrative team an opportunity to adjust the plan and revise and bring it back to you for ultimate approval.
So the idea is comments, it would be for next month's approval, not for what the, okay.
So if, let's say, the board said we don't want to do it virtual anymore, we only want to do in person, we would look at the impact. We might have to do some surveys. Again, I'm just making this up as a suggestion. See what the impact would be, bring that to you. And if you still wanted to go that route, then you'd approve the plan, and that would be what we'd do at a certain point. If you wanted to change the way we're doing something, this would be the process of how we would do it. So each month you're going to look at the plan, and the plan is in your attached document is the COVID-19 return to learning plan that was approved back in, I believe it was September when we brought it to you. It had to be, I think it's September 28th, we officially submitted it, that we had it done before October 5th. That plan has been approved by the ISD. We had to submit it to the ISD, and it has been approved. The plan is available on our website under the transparency report, which is required by law. So you also see not only the plan, but also the letter from the ISD endorsing the plan. Any questions on the actual plan of what we're doing, or any okay. The second part of the plan is to gather public comment. Let me back up here. There is a section of the plan that addresses English language learners and special education populations or other population. Some districts are virtual, but they're bringing in certain groups of students to come in person to provide their instruction, special ed, English language learners, et cetera. We are providing in person as well as virtual, and those students that qualify are receiving those services either virtually or in person. So this wouldn't be applicable to Richmond. The second part is to gather and allow parents to have feedback on the document. Our plan is that we run a live synchronous students, a live stream basically. Students are expected to check in the morning and go through their day as they would if they were in person. In secondary, they check into 6 different hours. At the middle school, it's 7 different hours. At elementary school, it could be AM, PM, and then the content area, gym, art, music that they're servicing. So at this point, we would be opening up to any parents who have comments about our plan who would like the board to consider.
Well, that's before all the other stuff we have here.
We could do it either way. This was the order that they're recommending the ISD, because all the districts are using the same template to submit to ultimately the CEPI, which is the state database department. So if you want, I can go over the percentage rates first, and then we could do the.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. The third part is looking at the review of two-way communication. The law requires that we have at least 2 times per week that we are in communication with students. So because we are live synchronous instruction, every hour, all week, we are in two-way communication or have the ability to have two-way communication with virtual students. So what these numbers represent is we pull out of PowerSchool for every student. What's the percentage that have at least 2 present codes? Because that means they were logged in for synchronous instruction or they were in person. So it's not that they were in every class for all 5 days. It's 2 in-person or virtual contacts. So the week of September 8th, you can see the district average was 98.68. The week of September 14th, the district average was 99.49. The week of the 21st, 99.74. The week of September 28th, 99.36. The week of October 5th, 99.04. And the week of October 12th would have been 99.62. The comment section would represent if there was an anomaly that happened. So for maybe there was a building that for some reason had a significant low, or everybody else was traditionally low, and we had a building that had a high percentage, to be able to explain what happened there, what was the anomaly. As you can see, our buildings are pretty much in the same target and area as any building or any students.
And this means this is for reporting purposes.
This is
to
for
the state for funding.
In order to maintain our per pupil funding, the requirement for virtual, as well as in-person, but virtual, is you have at least 2 communications per week with each student.
Okay.
And then finally, the last part of for the reporting is that once the board approves it, we sign off. As of the date of this submission to your board packet, CEPI had not yet identified how they wanted us to send this to them. It just came today about an hour before the board meeting. There's a link that I have to upload the action of the board and our plan to CEPI, and it has to be done by Friday. The law was changed in the amendment to the budget, where it's not every 30 days. You have 30 days from the point of when you approve it. So when we get around Christmas and New Year's, we're not going to run into that problem. It's basically once a month we have to approve it. So if we stick with the plan that we're going to do it on the second meeting of each month, we will cover what we need.
And CEPI is the reporting place to show that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing to get our funding.
CEPI is the Center for Educational Progress, and I've drawn a blank on the I, but it's basically all the data that they collect on public schools, the M-STEP data, the rep reports that we send into the state on the staff. It all goes to CEPI.
Right. Okay. Before we do the public comment part, does any board member have any questions? Jessica or Chris?
Nope.
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay, then Like I said, this is our public comment with respect to our return to learning plan. So if there's anybody in the virtual audience who has a public comment that they would like to make, I'll reach out there first. We just have the one page, correct, that I'm looking at?
Yes.
Okay.
Any good seats still available?
What's that?
Nothing.
Oh, I heard you. Okay. Okay. We have nobody virtually. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board a public comment about the return to learning plan? That looks like no. Okay. So we have no public comment.
So in the document that gets submitted in that part, I'll put the comment, no public comments for the October 26th board meeting.
Okay.
So
Okay.
then sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
So then our next part was about 2 weeks ago, we did a survey at our professional development with our staff, as well as a survey that we sent to them electronically to see how are things going. What are things that you would like more assistance on? What do you feel is going successful? What are things that maybe you might need more training on? It was very open-ended. Each building took time to discuss it with their staff. And then following that October 12th professional development, Mr. Berkmeyer sent out a survey for staff to respond, which you also have in your packet, and you have the results of that survey. So tonight, the administrators, we're going to talk about their building. And I'm not sure if Mr. Koshin is on. He was having trouble
he's
logging
there.
in. Oh, there he is. Just in time, Mr. Koshin. So I'm going to turn it over to them to have them talk to you about the conversations that they had at their professional development about the things that are going well and things that that we want to improve on. So I'll start with Mr. Koshin.
Okay, I'm having a little technical difficulty with my computer, so I'm on my phone. So can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
just want to check. I normally don't use my phone, so I had to improvise a little bit tonight. So at the elementary staff meeting, one thing we did, we split into small groups so they could have some discussion about, we kind of did 3 different things, some successes, some things that weren't quite working yet, and then some things that they needed some additional help on. So after they had some time to work in their small groups, then they used Post-it notes. We had 3 poster papers around the media center. So they not only had time to discuss in small groups, then they had time to continue to practice social distancing and just put some of their notes up on poster paper for everyone else to see. Once that activity was completed, they had opportunities to work in their grade levels on some ideas. And then I shared all this information with the staff the following day. So they knew what everybody else kind of put in and some of their thoughts and ideas. And then these poster papers with all the information have been posted in our staff lounge. So the staff can continue to look at them, add some more ideas. They can also comment on what some other of the staff members put in. So it's kind of an ongoing dialogue, even though they're not face-to-face or have the professional development time to work on it. So some of the successes, just to overview some of it. Some staff members, and these is directly what the staff members put. They like the extra monitor is very helpful. So I know they just started using those a few weeks ago. So that has been a very positive involvement in there. Nonverbal cues, they're used for muting the microphone and if students want to share. So once again, they're learning how to engage the virtual students in the classroom. Only use the chat to talk to parents during live sessions. We have some teachers who figured out how to do breakout sessions. So the virtual students were able to work together in a different group. So as they're doing some group work, some partner work in the classroom. Learn how to use the lobby. So as we're learning on how to use Microsoft Teams, some staff members are just venturing a little bit, doing some research and learning some things on their own that they're able to share with the rest of the staff. Some staff members put more one-to-one interaction time with some students. Another success is students are logging in and working every day. Some teachers were able to share reading groups with virtual on the laptop. So it's one of the key things we do at the elementary level is small reading groups. So it might be 2 or 3 students. So some teachers are learning and using that with their virtual students. I've gotten a pretty good routine. Some teachers have a good routine of knowing when the virtual students need to mute or unmute themselves. Some things that aren't quite working. There was some discussion about NWEA testing being taken place at home, just seeing how accurate those scores may be. Teachers can't see the students as they're testing, can't monitor the students, so that is a little concern of just how that might look once we do the winter testing and compare the scores. We also have a new math manuals and workbooks for students. So at this time, the teacher editions are online only. So some teachers are getting used to that, using the screens, not only for their online teacher manual, but also for the virtual students. Some teachers still working on what works best for them and their students for their small guided reading groups. So that's where we'll have the opportunity for staff to share, what it looks like and the successes that some teachers do have. One thing wasn't quite working when the power went out. It kind of shut down everything, and it takes a little while for everything to log back in. But that's kind of a rare instance that we do lose power. And then some help. So we talked about what some teachers may need to continue to learn about Microsoft Teams, about the virtual learning. So one teacher put not getting emails to notify me when virtual students enter virtual learning, not having an expert on Schoology to turn for support. And that's why we shared all these ideas and all these things at the staff PD. And that's why we continue the conversation, so teachers can reach out to other teachers who are having some successes and can share some of their thoughts and ideas, which I know staff has been doing on a regular basis. And then one thing we've had some issues with are a couple teachers saying that their handheld microphones that they pass to students to use only stays on for about 5 minutes, and then the power goes out and they lose power. So that's something we're working with the technology department to see if something's not charging right, if something's not plugged in correctly, and then just know what can we do to make sure that those can stay on longer power. So once again, as we continue learning about Microsoft Teams, continue to look at virtual learning, this was a great opportunity for the staff to share some of their thoughts and ideas with others, especially grade levels. A lot of times the different grade levels don't have the opportunity to meet and collaborate. So it's something we're going to focus on every one of our staff PDs throughout the course of the year as we look at our preparedness plan and how virtual learning is going, so we can continue to give what's best for students when they're at home learning virtually.
One of the things I'd just like to add to what Mr. Koshin, that day I happened to be at the elementary professional development, and they, because of our concern with potentially a staff member testing positive, we have been working on moving staff so that they're not necessarily next to someone for the previous guidelines of more than 15 minutes. So doing short segments, moving them around, having them go into classrooms and be able to break down into smaller groups, et cetera. So that's been a challenge, if you will, to rethink how we offer professional development to staff. So,
Are there any questions? Mr. Koshin, I have some.
Yes.
So this was done at a staff meeting, everybody talking, right?
Correct. Yep.
On October 12th. So one of the successes was the reading group sharing, and one of the need to work on was the reading groups. So have we got that figured out now on the 26th, those people that it's working well for?
Yeah, what we did is some teachers that had some experience or were able to figure out some different aspects of the Microsoft Teams, especially putting them in breakout sessions, because that's where small groups of students can go with the virtual. I asked teachers teachers are able to do that, to do some like a to-do list, or I should say a how-to list. So they are working on creating that. So I have the document almost complete to share with the staff. So some of the things that we do need help on, we're continuing to work on those, and those are in progress, so we can share those with the teachers. But also, have teachers times that they identify who are some of the go-to people, so some of the staff can go, on their own time before school or after school, or when they can meet with teachers, kind of show them how to do some things like that.
The one point, when I put a file in Schoology, the students tell me it's not there. That I would think would be an IT issue. Has that been straightened out for whoever's issue that was?
As far as I have, because I have not heard that that's still an issue.
Okay. This is, I don't know whether it's Mr. Walmsley or you, Mr. Koshin, but the NWA testing, do we, like in my building, we've brought a couple of kids in to test them because they're virtual and it doesn't work for them to do the testing. Is that an option? If we've got issues with the testing, to bring a student in, whether a parent would be agreeable to it or something to help the student and the taking the tests?
I know when the administrators first were talking about how we're going to do NWA, we had decided as a group, as a leadership team, that we're going to have virtual students do it virtually. And what I tell teachers too is, as they're, we took the NWA maybe the second, third week of school,
Right.
is that, let's get to know the students. If you still think it's an issue, or you think that score was somehow way too high or way too low, because sometimes we do that with students who do it in person. We can look at making some adjustments in the winter session if we need to. But once again, I just had teachers, wait to kind of see, how it goes over the first, the fall. And then as we get closer to the winter session, something we can look at, just see what's going to be best for everyone, so we get the accurate data and can make sure that we're supporting those virtual students as much as possible.
Okay.
NWA did launch this year this ability. I am interested in how some other districts it's handled. Like, we have a couple of our neighboring districts that have done exactly what you said. They brought kids in, and just the logistics of what that entails. So I will be bringing that back to the team from what I gather from other districts.
Okay. And then the one, I'm not getting emails to notify me of virtual students entering virtual learning. I'm assuming that means the issues that we've had where a student had to quarantine and then they went into virtual. Would that be what
that's part
means?
Of, when we first started work on this, sometimes teachers didn't have their lobbies set up correctly so they can see who's coming in. And I know at the elementary, we've had some students who have gone, they were virtual, but then they come back face to face. So probably about the second, third week of school, we saw a lot of movement. Each day it could have been 3 or 4 students who were making some movement, just as we're trying to figure out what's best for the student, whether it's the virtual or face to face. So once again, what I'll be doing, since I got this information out a couple weeks ago and teachers had some time, then I'm going to send out kind of a follow-up on it and just see where we also need to go. If some of these are still issues, how can we address them, or if there's any additional ones, because I know our next staff PD isn't for a couple more weeks. My next part is after, last staff PD was a few weeks ago. Now we're going to just do another follow-up to see where we're going and what we need to do for the next staff PD. So I'll be doing another check-in point before the staff PD.
Would you tell me what a lobby is? What you're talking about there?
When the Microsoft Teams is going on, you can see who's waiting in the lobby. So sometimes if it's set up that you have to let the student in before they can just join, that way it's just a way to keep track. It's very similar to Zoom. Zoom kind of has a lobby. If you set up that you have to wait to be let in before, you can't just join all of a sudden. So it's just, that's what it is that students are waiting to be let in.
So it would be really important that teachers knew that they had virtual students coming in.
Right. Yep.
To their lobby.
And at this point, like I said, have not heard that being the issue for the last few weeks. I think that's one of those things that teachers kind of just had an issue with before, but kind of just figured out through the discussion with either their grade level or at the staff PD the other day. The other week.
I was extremely impressed of watching the staff. And Mrs. Radoicic was one of them. There was a staff member, I want to say it was Mrs. Schroeder, who had an issue, and she was complimenting Mrs. Radoicic because she put it out there to the staff, and within minutes, a staff member who knew how to fix it or do what she was looking to do was able to get her in the right direction and correct the issue. So it goes back to how we started this, is we're trying to find the experts within our buildings. Schoology is new to all of us. That is a challenge. And what you're going to hear as we go through this is probably time is another challenge.
Right.
Probably working against it. And we don't have this year the ability that we had grade level and department meetings. It's not that we don't want to, it's we just don't have the subs to release teachers to do that. So we've got to be creative and look at some other ways to do that. So.
And my last one, Mr. Koshin,
Mhm.
the one that the teacher manual for math won't print online. Can we please purchase actual guides?
Yep, I've looked into that. Just recently, I got a quote on how much manuals would be, like paper manuals for teachers. So next challenge would just be seeing how we can get those financed, and that's something like I just got the quote last
Okay.
Friday, so I just looked at it today. So that one's in progress.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
So we'll go to Mr.
Mr.
Bartels next.
Bartels, yep.
Good evening. First of all, Mr. Burkmeyer and I are extremely proud of our teachers. Their openness, their willingness to share, to collaborate, going the extra mile to figure this out for both the virtual students and the in-class students at the same time. The sharing out, and Mr. Walmsley was talking about the sharing out, and hey, I found a better way to do this, or this program can do this. It started, before we even had students entering our classrooms, and just the willingness of them to share, and because education can't be a private practice, and for them to share all of the tricks of all of the programs, constantly communicating to everybody via email, and when we have opportunities as a whole group, has been fun to watch. And it doesn't surprise us with the staff that we have. So we've been we understand that this is very difficult, and it is stressful. But the fact that the teachers aren't showing their stress, we know they're stressed. Everybody's stressed. This is very unique. But the fact that they're not showing it, and they're rolling up their sleeves and just getting it done is just amazing to watch. So we couldn't be prouder. During that meeting, during the staff meeting a couple of weeks ago, we did want to find out what, from their eyes as experts that are running it every hour, what are the troubles that they see? How can we come to the table to help alleviate some of the concerns? And we also focused in on those things that are in our control, because we could go on for an hour of things that aren't in our control, and we just wasted an hour. So we tried to focus in on those things that we had control over, or could at least move in the right direction. A few of those concerns were students who wouldn't stay on the camera during the hour, and they're not on the camera. They just have a picture on the camera, so that when the teacher calls on them, that they know they're there, they know they're engaged, was one of the concerns brought to us. Another one was the chat room. When we're dealing with older kids, the chat room was twofold. Was kids talking about inappropriate, not necessarily inappropriate, but were off task with other students in the chat room. So basically the chat rooms became the students' cell phones. Instead of texting each other, they were using the chats. And that can be distracting too, because if it's projected on the whiteboard out front, or front of the classroom, everyone can see the chats. So it was not only distracting to the virtual students, but to the in-class, because every time a chat goes, it dings and lets the teacher know that there was some kind of communication. And then during the classroom, this hasn't been a terrible problem, but it's been a few times where parents would use the chat during the classroom period and ask the teacher questions. And we've communicated with those parents and just said that, we would prefer you to email them separately or give them a call. because the chat is the communication of the classroom stuff. Everybody can see it. It's not private, so on and so forth. So I haven't, we haven't had a follow-up since then, but I haven't heard that that's still a problem. Moving on. The same thing is with the camera. In a few occasions where there would be distractions going, depending on what was going on during the hour, people in the background walking by or hearing those background noises or conversations that, unfortunately the whole class can hear. The other one I have here is the use of packets. We have several of our virtual learners wanting packets. They liked what we did to end the year last year, and they just want packets and to kind of forget about the being online all the time. And that's not the plan that we chose. So we haven't been, if the packet is the only way for the in-class and out-of-class, then obviously that's something that we have to do. But if there's alternatives to that, that's not something that we're pushing as packets, because we want to be paper free as much as possible, even for our in-class kids, to like use a notebook or something. And then the other one would be where students would leave the class to help with a chore, help carry something downstairs or go help split wood or leaving their class because they're needed at home, because it was convenient that they are home to help. So those were the few of the frustrations. Some of the stuff has worked itself out, with the technology and having all the usernames be working and having everybody get on Schoology, and all of that stuff has worked itself out. The most recent technology issue would have been substitutes getting on, being able to control the classroom, being able to let people in, setting up those extra accounts, classroom accounts and stuff. But Mr. Berkmeyer and the technology team has done a great job setting all that up. And it was just a learning curve thing. And we appreciate the parents' patience and the teachers' patience. And it's been a lot of patience going all around that we're thankful for, but wasn't perfect, but I would say we're getting better every day.
Thank you. Any questions?
I've had the opportunity to watch Mr. Bartels and Mr. Berkmeyer and their staff, and you talk about a dedicated staff in terms of jumping in and helping. And we've had a couple long-term subs that we filled in, and just as Mr. Bartels said, the attitude that we can do this, we can get through it. We are cautious, as I said at the beginning, of the stress level of our staff. But I think this is, for some, it's caused them to be more creative than they already were, because they've had to think truly outside the box. So, and I can't thank Mr. Berkmeyer and the team, really all the administrators, because they've taken on a lot of duties that weren't in their normal year, being tech wizards for some of those. Usually that would have been the Eric and Harold and Keith, but they've had to pick up some of those duties. So they have a great staff there at the middle school. And, we still have some issues with some internet connections. And we've been trying to work with individual families to try to find a different provider to see if that will work. We're still working through some of those. It's not significant.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question. In regards to the chats being off task and whatnot, are we doing any type of disciplinary actions like we would if they were disrupting class while in class?
Yeah, what would happen there is it would start with the teacher first, where the teacher would, and there's been situations where it'd be after class or after school. We've had teachers doing a quick team meeting with their virtual learners saying, hey, I need you on task, or you're missing this homework, like that first 10 minutes after school or 10 minutes before school. where they've corrected a lot of those issues. So the teachers have taken the lead on that. Because it's all about creating the relationship. You know, they need to trust the teacher. The teacher needs to have that relationship and that rapport with the student. And if it doesn't get handled and it continues to be a problem, and that's when there would be a referral that would go to Mr. Berkmeyer, and then from Mr. Berkmeyer would go to me. But so far, the teachers have been able to handle it, and we haven't heard of it being. Now, is it going to happen from time to time? Yes, but has it been out of control like maybe it was starting a few weeks ago? I think that's been tempered.
Okay. And then also, are students allowed? I know that you guys want them to be on screen, but are they allowed to mute themselves?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so they have the ability to unmute and mute themselves, and that's not an issue.
Yeah, because of the background voice and, you know, family privacy and what happens, you know, I if my kids were virtual, I would certainly want them to be able to mute. I don't know if you guys can hear my 2 dogs barking right now. I'd like to be able to mute them right now, but I can't. So, because I have to talk. But yeah, they have the ability to mute themselves.
Okay, I was just asking because then, so then the complaints about the individuals with the background noises and whatnot, they just are not muting themselves. It's not they are not allowed to; they're just not doing it.
Well, that and you know the parent could be talking to another sibling or a spouse or not knowing they're on, and you know like tonight I told my kids downstairs, I said, I'm going to be on now, you guys got to be quiet, and I shut my door, but they could forget and start screaming, you know, so it's part of it.
And you did say, Keith, that we've curbed the parents talking in the middle of class.
I haven't, you know, and again, it wasn't a huge problem, and most parents respected the process. And we had, Mr. Berkmeyer and I had a couple of meetings with some parents, and we understand the frustration. And then once everybody sees it from both sides and all viewpoints and sees big picture, most people understood that it's a privacy issue, you know, between family, student, and you know. And so far, so good.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Castle.
Good evening. I'm going to kind of echo a little bit of what Mr. Bartels said there as well, because we have a lot of the same successes and failures. One of the things that we did, I felt, was essential for the high school getting off on a good foot was to do that boot camp that we did at the beginning of the year that allowed not only our students to become familiar with the different technology that we're going to be using, but just as important, our staff, because our staff came in early, much like the staff at the Lee in the middle school, in order to become acclimated to the technology. But there's a big difference between doing it by yourself or one of your fellow coworkers and then having an entire class of 30 in front of you and being able to work through the kinks. So much like we expected, there were some minor issues the first couple of weeks, primarily hardware and software issues. And we've been lucky because Mr. Lamont's done a great job being right there on site and kind of running all over. He's probably doing 5-6 miles a day, running between the different classrooms and different kids, being able to help them with those technology issues. And we've got most of them solved right now. One of the bigger issues that we ran into was just the placement of the cameras in some of our ceilings, the higher ceilings in the classrooms. Just because of the placement vertically, we weren't able to capture certain areas of the room. So we've worked with Mr. Berkmeyer, and I believe we've got on order some extenders that come down to bring those cameras down a couple extra feet, so they're able to capture the room more appropriately to help our students. One of the big things that we're doing, and we did a virtual practice day just this last Friday, kind of to refresh our students and our staff, because the majority of our students, actually the overwhelming majority of our students, are in person. But we want to make sure that our in-person students are able to access the Teams and Schoology in the event that we ever do have to go to an all virtual situation. We've had a lot of successes. You know, the teachers are great in the high school with their willingness and their ability to go back and help each other. It's an ongoing dialogue. You walk in the high school and you'll see one teacher walking into a different teacher's room, and then a group of them in a chat talking about things that they're doing that are working for them. We have had some issues with Power School talking to Schoology and going back and forth. But we seem to, you know, one of our teachers came to me with that issue. I put it out there to the staff, and within a couple of hours, there was an answer to that. It was, hey, it's this setting, go ahead and fix this. So it's really been a team effort all around at the high school. Some of the issues we've had are much like Mr. Bartels just mentioned, is the high school students' willingness to be on camera. And the attendance issues, especially during that count period, making sure that our students were on camera so they can be counted for attendance, and keeping them on camera the entire time. Having that participation from our teenagers and trying to prevent them from multitasking, because a lot of our 15, 16-year-olds, they do have the ability and the technology to be on camera like I am right now, but also have a TV going on over here, having a phone going on down here, having an Apple Watch here. So really trying to get our kids to focus singularly on what they're doing instructionally. It has been a positive. We had, unfortunately, had some students that were home quarantined for a couple of weeks. And instead of those students missing any instruction, it was very seamless. We made the phone call, we made the email, and that next day, all those students were transitioned right into the virtual learning and didn't miss a beat. So where they could have potentially been out and missed some instruction and fall behind, they really hopped right out of that next day and came back without missing a beat. So much like the Lee in the middle school, we're not perfect, but we are very good and we're continuing to get better every day.
Any questions?
I don't have a question specifically, but I love the idea that you had that refresher. I think that's a great idea for everybody, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you are presented with it. And so I think that's a great idea. Thanks.
Mr. Castle, the one point where it says individual teachers have had concerns with the syncing of data between Schoology and Power School and the additional workload and confusion that this has created.
Mm-hmm.
Are we good?
Yeah, and then that was one of the cases that I was just speaking about. It was actually a member of one of our English department was grading papers and talking about how he loved the ability to make notations and send them right back to the students, and then the students would resubmit it, and he would get a notification that the students resubmitted, but it wouldn't tell him which student. So then he would have to go through every one of his students and look and try to find out and then make those adjustments in Power School. But that was one of those cases where he went and he got some help from one of his fellow teachers, and they synced it up and things are working good now.
Oh, got it. Okay. Okay. And then the little blurb you had about students not following the virtual learners agreement. Since this was, I'm assuming that this was your meeting a couple weeks ago too. Are we good with that? Better than that? What exactly does that?
It's getting better. I can tell you what it is. It's our teachers are following the contract where the student has to be on camera for the entirety of the classroom, has to participate. Right. So the confusion that we're running into is we had a handful of students that the teachers are marking them absent every day because the teachers are telling us they're not on camera. And then the parents are calling us and saying, my son or daughter is promising me that they're on camera. So now I have this and this. So how do I handle that? So, we go through the process of having the teacher call the student, this and that. And quite frankly, there were a couple cases where I walked into the classroom and I sat at the desk off camera to verify for myself whether that student was on camera. And it was a miracle. As soon as the principal walked in the room, the kid all of a sudden popped up on camera. So I guess I'm magic and things seem to be working. So I hope Mr. Koshin and Mr. Bartels have the same power.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
The way Mr. Castle described about a staff member, throwing a question out there or a problem, and just anybody who has that knowledge base or that expertise jumping and helping. I see that in the email communications for the high school staff. They have really, and it's no surprise, as I believe we started the conversation, it's not a surprise our staff are doing that, but it really is it's a team effort. We put it out there, we figure it out, and we're gonna move forward. We are going to have the conversation with the administrative team now that we're done a quarter, what do we start doing with students who are not following the agreement about being online, and what are the consequences that may have to happen? We've got through pretty much almost all the technology issues. We've pretty much, people know how to use the system. Now we got to get them more engaged and involved. I would just like to say, the administrative team, Richmond's been a model for the county. We've had visitors from other districts. We have the International Academy in Macomb calling to find out what we're doing in our system. We've had Roseville Community Schools come out, as well as several others. They're interested in how we're doing it, because when you think about what we've done, we are maximizing the instructional time with the classroom teacher. Is it challenging? Is it more work for a teacher? Absolutely. I won't even start to say that it's not. But we've been pretty creative, and we've got some things to work on and tweak and get better at it. But the maximizing instruction, I think one of the biggest struggles we have, and I know I've had this conversation with Mr. Castle and Mrs. Borwick, is part of our plan requires like hand washing. Part of it is getting virtual kids and doing attendance in person, attendance in virtual. Over time, that's taken away from some instructional time. And our teachers are so focused on maximizing instructional time that it's nervous for them, because we're giving them permission to have less instructional time because we have to do these practices in order to stay in school. But they're so dedicated in getting what students need. And like Mr. Rainier is a good example with the AP class. He wants his kids to be prepared for that AP exam when they take it. And any reduction in hours or any of the, that it's going to take away, it's a personal, because they're so personally connected to the students. So.
Can I ask a question? And where are we in regards to ordering the extensions for the cameras?
I'd have to double check on that. I know the order was listed with a quote, and we also added to that order the CareHawk sound system to bring into those large rooms. It would be your science rooms that have the tall ceilings that don't have the ceiling grid, and the band and art room, and the old choir room, which is currently Mrs. Smallwood's Spanish room. So those areas, but I will have to get back with you on that answer. I don't have it.
Yeah, and I can tell you, Mrs. Fortuna, in the meantime, they haven't. Those teachers that are in those rooms haven't been just sitting by and accepting that it doesn't work for everybody. They've actually been moving the placement of where they're doing their labs and moving things around to try to accommodate as many people as possible. So as a testament to our teachers in those areas, they're not just sitting put and saying, okay, I'll deal with this and only get 80% of the classroom. They're making the adjustments that are necessary to get as many people as much as what they need during those hours. So yes, as we're waiting, we're continuing to adjust our instruction.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Castle. Next is the staff survey.
Yep. So finally, after we did the in-person instruction, we sent out a survey because maybe someone wasn't as comfortable speaking in the dialogue, or something came up after that they wish they would have shared. So I asked Mr. Berkmeyer to put a broad, open-ended survey to staff, and I'll send it out. You have the results in your packet. There was 57 responses. It was for about a week out there for staff to respond. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Berkmeyer to talk about the survey.
So as Mr. Walmsley shared, we did have 57 responses. The first 4 questions were what levels do you teach, and then if you participated in the summer PE, just so we had a sense as to how they were answering other questions, what we might be able to go. Question number 5 was overall, how well do you think virtual learning was going? And this was on a scale of 1 to 4. We wanted to pick a spot where they had to choose. They couldn't just choose in the middle and say it's okay. So on 1 to 4, the average out of those 57 responses came out as 2.63 right now for teachers. And I'll be honest, we're looking at parent surveys and student surveys, and we're actually doing really well in those surveys. So I think the teachers are being a little bit hard on themselves. But also, I know that there are some concerns that we're going to share here as they went through the survey as well. So the next question was an open-ended one. There were some choices that they could choose. It said, what's the biggest struggle with Richmond's virtual learning system as it stands? So out of the choices that they could choose, Some of them were lack of professional development, teacher technology not working. Out of the things that we prepared for at the beginning of the year, that technology not working or lack of professional development, only 4 teachers out of 57 thought that had anything to do with some of the biggest problems. The main out of the choices were a combination of the student internet connections or connections at home malfunctioning or not working, along with students maybe just not having a firm understanding of Teams and Schoology at home. So even though they might have gone through that boot camp, our boot camps, and one of the reasons all buildings are going through, as Mr. Castle said, all buildings are practicing those virtual learning days. That boot camp was happening in the first 2 weeks of school. And unfortunately, that's when we were also experiencing some of our higher technology issues because we were just figuring out when things were working and teachers were just, so that is improving, but that was shown in the survey that some students just lack an understanding. So they also had an opportunity to choose other. That was the main response there, and the other could be summed up. Again, some of them said student internet and not understanding, so they didn't pick those choices above, but they typed it in the response. Others could share that not all, while many of the virtual learners have support at home, not all the students have the support that they might need to be successful at home. And the biggest theme that transpired through the other and the biggest struggle was a feeling it's time, and teachers wish that they had the ability to teach in person and virtual separately. Obviously, we chose a system that we knew at the time would fit with the pupil accounting and what we were doing, so that teaching both in person and virtual, it does fall on one teacher, and we can understand that the teachers are still figuring that out, and they feel that is a big struggle they have. The next question then is, in their opinion, what was going well with virtual learning? And there are some great responses there. Relationship building, some teachers said that they are very surprised at their ability to build relationships virtually. They were a little nervous going into it, and they're still being able to make those connections. Students that are learning virtually are able to keep pace with those in class and going, as opposed to an asynchronous system where students might fall behind. Many students feel a part of the class. Students get to see the class, and it gave families a real choice. And then another theme was the fact that we're using the same platform, K-12, so all teachers all have the ability to support one another, and at home, students don't have to learn different systems, or parents don't have to learn different systems when they might have students in different grade levels. And then the last question is, what is the top area you feel the district could offer more support for virtual learning? Time came up a lot here. More time for PD, more time for prep, more time for teaching, and sometimes just time off, just a break. Teachers feel really pressed for time right now. There was a theme of having some additional PD where teachers that are doing this well can share their strategies, or just an opportunity for individuals to get together and share what's working and not working. I know that all the buildings are taking that time during the PD to have those sharing sessions, but again, those meetings are once a month, so I think teachers are looking for that to be even more regular if possible. And then the last common thing was more training for the online students, making sure that they have the support they need to be able to work through the systems.
So when they're talking more training for the online students, because don't have the ability to get online? Is that, I guess I'm a little confused at that.
So I'm pulling this off of the survey responses, and some of the survey responses were very specific, and others weren't. Some of the things I shared was just some of the online students seem to lack a basic understanding of Schoology, and even though teachers have been training that and doing it, whether the students not paying attention or just doesn't have the support, it's causing some concern there. Along with some of the responses shared that making sure that even though we have those technology modes in place, making sure the students know that if they're experiencing a tech issue, how to reach out and how to get that corrected as quickly as possible.
Okay.
I was wondering how many total surveys were sent out? We got 57 responses, but how many total surveys were sent out?
To teachers?
Yeah.
We sent one paper that they respond. This is the one that's in the packet. And then we had a couple days prior, we had the conversation at each of the PD. That's for teaching staff.
Yeah. Are you asking how many total teachers do we have?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have 85 bodies. Some are part-time, but 85 teachers.
Okay. Thank you.
Anthony, I don't believe this question is for you, but it's part of your survey. But there is quite a bit about time, whether it's professional development, whether it's time to catch up, whatever all the different terms are here. What can we do with respect to that as a district?
We have the ability for time to restructure our calendar. It would have to be negotiated with the teachers union in order to provide professional development time built into the calendar. For instance, prior to this school year, you had to have 180 student days and 1,098 hours. The legislature changed the law again to go back to what it used to be, that we could use some of their student days as professional development days and count them towards the 180 student days. So we could, instead of having a student day, do a professional development day. We could do time in terms of compensation after hours. My preference is that's not always the best because they've had a long day and they're exhausted. I mean, if you look at any of us who when you get home or get in the car, you just kind of unwind and relax. Yet alone, they have their own family commitments they have to do. So what can we do? We can adjust the calendar is one option. We could offer time where teachers, it's not their scheduled work day, and compensate them for their time that they would come in and provide that additional professional development. This year,
I'm sorry.
This year, having release time is virtually impossible because of the sub issue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the past, we would. Oh, go ahead.
But we would have the ability to do something, whether it's a day. You said you'd have to talk with teacher union leaders. We could have the ability to have a day. We have up to 5, you said?
Yes, we currently are using one of them, Martin Luther King Day, as a PD day.
Okay.
So there's 179 student days, and one of those makes it 180 for the Martin Luther King.
I mean, I don't know what everyone else thinks, but there's a lot in this survey that talks about professional development and time. And I think we all understand that part of it because it is a lot, and we know that it's a lot. So is that something that we're thinking about doing sooner rather than later?
I have a question, Brian. Is there a chance of an early dismissal for students on one day a week or a couple days a week to?
We could look that as an option for an early dismissal, and then making sure that we're still getting the two-way communication and the minutes. It would be something I would have to explore to make sure we can do it for what our pupil accounting rules are.
Okay.
But that's another option, is an early dismissal.
And that, but would that be the same conversation of uh, with teachers union? That idea
and
as well as
any
okay,
change to the calendar has to be negotiated. The
okay,
calendar is an item of bargaining. It's a bargained item. So we'd have to sit down and do
Right.
and everything so far with the REA has been extremely supportive on it. So
right. Well, and I would
wouldn't-
think, I don't know why it would be something that they wouldn't be agreeable to, but um, I, I just think based on reading these pages and pages of stuff that maybe that's something.
Yeah, because I'm wondering,
Well-
when do they have time to help the virtual students with questions or help? You know, they're not in person, so I'm sure they work it into their day somehow, but I don't want to see them terribly stressed out trying to reach out to the virtual. I know.
And we have to take in consideration the first quarter of school is probably one of the most stressful time for staff.
Correct.
Come back. We in the middle of a pandemic, so we're teaching now two different ways, virtual and in person. We have to teach it. We did Blue Devil Days for the first time virtually. We did conferences for the first time virtually. All of this stuff has been completely different and outside of. So that alone, and I've shared it with the administrators for the last several weeks, I'm concerned regarding just the overall stress level of teaching our teachers at this point. And I'm not the only superintendent. I've talked with my colleagues who've also been back to school, and they're all seeing similar trends. So some type of break, some type of time, some type of renegotiating the minutes, I think would be in everybody's best interest.
That's
So
one of the reasons why I asked specifically about how many had filled out the survey, because, you know, we have 28 people who didn't fill it out. And did they not fill it out because they're already exhausted with their time? You know,
Right.
they just couldn't get to it. And, you know, those voices are important to us too. And so I would agree that we need to look at how we can provide that time for them.
Sooner
So
rather
what I
than
can do is
later.
I can get with the administrative team, get with the REA regarding calendar, look at our options. I can bring something back because you'd have to approve it to amend the plan at the next one. At the next board meeting, you could, if we can get it done before, you could actually amend it at the next one. And then we're reporting on it to get some of those dates and times in place.
Yes.
Yes.
No?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll focus on the time and those type of surveys and see what we can come up with.
So then, when we're going to approve the plan, would the motion or whatever, would that be, we're going to approve it with the idea that we want to have this PD time or whatever it is included in it?
So
Is
in the sample motion that's in your packet, on the
Mhm.
second page, there's a statement that says optional. And it just basically says, furthermore, the board directs the superintendent to amend the COVID-19 learning plan as discussed with those amendments brought to the board at the next meeting. So as discussed would be the time aspect.
What we just talked about.
What we
We don't have
just
to be
talked about.
specific.
Correct.
Okay.
You can if you want. If you want to make sure that it's clear that that's what we want me to bring back, you can.
I think it's clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why I listed that so that it had an opportunity during this
Okay.
discussion to be able to interject that and bring it back to you.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Berkmeyer?
I don't know if the question is for Mr. Berkmeyer or Mr. Walmsley, but could we do like additional boot camps for the students?
I
So,
think that's, sorry, go ahead, Anthony.
no, so one of the things that I have been sending out to the administrators and we've been discussing in our instructional groups is the continuous practicing of going online, as Mr. Castle said, so that all students are comfortable with the learning systems. In that, we talk about the systems themselves. Remember, this is how you access a file. This is how you turn in an assignment. So that is what our boot camp was, and that practice, doing it as a whole group. So the whole class is going through it, gives that virtual learner an opportunity to learn it again as we're going through it as well.
And then I also noticed on the survey that there was a lot of talk about teachers doing both virtual and in person at the same time. And I know that we've had this discussion before, but curious because just recently, wasn't it that they had the option to change and be virtual or be in person again? So I'm just curious on like where those numbers are. So like, did they change drastically? Like, did we get more virtual learners? Are we more in person now?
We have more in-person students. We had at one point up to about 250 students choosing virtual. By the first round where they made the selection, we're down to about 205 students that are choosing virtual. There were many families that indicated that they just wanted to see how we were going to open school because they really wanted in person, but there was some hesitation. We have another window coming up. I believe it's the Friday, November 6th, that students can choose to go back to in-person or go to virtual. Another 5-week windows coming up. So we currently have about 205. And I say currently because as students are quarantined and so forth, we're moving them very fluidly in and out.
So do we have like a certain amount of, so do you still think it doesn't make sense, I guess, to look at having one virtual teacher for each grade, or?
I'm hesitant to answer that for this reason. Currently, if you look at virtuals by grade level, and I did not bring that with me, but I can get that to you.
Okay.
The class sizes would be not balanced. There would be fewer students in the virtual teacher's class, and we'd put more in-person kids. At the elementary classroom, they're not that big. So even putting the 22, 23, 24 that we have in them and spacing the desk out, it's still a full classroom. And now I may be putting 5 or 6 more kids in there. Where the challenge comes is when we get to the high school and you have your highly qualified teachers. We don't have enough kids in virtual, in a chemistry, in an algebra 2, in a bio to run just one section of a virtual class. So either I would run the one section and the other sections would be higher, 36-ish, if you have to overload the in-person classes. So that's the challenge because of the size and the just sheer numbers. Elementary, you could be creative and you could have a virtual classroom K1, 2, and you could combine 3 grade levels. That's multi-age classrooms. Some districts have split classrooms, multi-age, however you want to call it or phrase it. There's a different philosophy for each one, but you could do that. It's a little more challenging because you're teaching multiple curriculums. An elementary teacher teaches basically 5 curriculums right now.
Right.
And if they have 2 different grade levels, in essence, they're teaching 10 curriculums.
It can be hard on the learner as well, because especially if they're dipping into a virtual environment, if they're sidetracked from their learning because they've been exposed to COVID or they're quarantined, they need to get caught up with that faculty member, see where they're at with the new teaching style and things of that nature. It can be hard on the learner.
If we were going down that road, I would not recommend 5-week increments. I would recommend what other districts are doing. You're committing to a semester. And you are in that first semester because the ability, as Mrs. Furtaw mentioned, if I'm in person now and I want to go to virtual and I'm going to learn a new teacher and a new teacher's procedure and all that, it's a hard transition. It can be a hard transition. Not impossible, but it can be challenging.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just noticed that seemed to be mentioned a few times. So I just kind of wanted to see where we're at with our numbers and if that seemed like that might be a possibility, but it doesn't appear to be.
I think as we reflect on this year and look at the overall, it's going to be a conversation that we're going to have with the REA and the administrative group in terms of just from the perspective, if what you're hearing on the news is all true, then we may still have a problem next summer. So we don't know. I would just like to, in your packet, you have a copy of the letter and the survey link for parents. That's open till Friday, as well as we sent out a survey link for students today to get their input on how things are going and what ways we can improve. So Mr. Berkmeyer was able to create those for me. And as he said in his presentation, we've had a pretty good turnout in terms of response already.
So is the idea that those results will come in a
Bring those-
month? Okay.
What are the ages of the students who are taking the survey?
Grades 3 through 12. So it goes with class of 2030 to the class of 2021.
Any other questions, or comments? Thank you, Mr. Berkmeyer. Okay, moving on. First reading of Board Policy 5301, compulsory attendance, absenteeism, and truancy.
This policy was part of the policies we did several weeks ago. I did pull it out because we had made some changes to the policy this year as well as last year as a countywide to try to get consistency in the coding that we're using. So as students transfer from one district to another, the codes represent the same thing. So in your packet, or if you look online, the stuff that's in the first part is basically our existing policy, the codes that we use, page 1 and page 2, all the way to the top of page 3 where it talks about absences and calling within 24 hours. That's all our current language. Where you see starting with the letter A, required attendance, that's the TRUN policy. The amendments we made was in section D. We don't excuse absences. We have verified, unverified, and documented absences are our description. So it's just correcting that language. We look at, so you'll see some of them like severe weather. If it's a school cancellation, it's listed as a cancellation, school cancellation. College planning visits are fall under school business, and it doesn't count towards an absence. And then when you get into the excessive absences and tardyism, that's our current policy right now of the 7 absences start to trigger the conversation and the notifications. The state, when you look at absences, looks at 10% of the absence as persistent absences, an issue that they start flagging school districts. So you're talking about that would actually be roughly 9 absences a semester that would hit us into a state concern, if you will.
Any questions? No? Okay. Moving on to the regular public comment portion of our meeting. This is the part of our meeting that if someone would like to address the board, they can do so. You can do it virtually or from here in the audience. While it is not a question and answer period, if you do have an issue that you would like, a question you would like answered, you can leave, if you're here in the audience, you can leave your name and phone number. Someone will get back with you. Virtually, if you have something that you would like answered, you can email it to me at mtelto@richmond.k12.mi.us. At our last meeting, we did have a couple of questions directed to the board, so we're going to answer those first before we go into our regular public comment. And Jessica, you're going to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. So at the last meeting, I was asked what I found out when employee turnover and my thoughts on it. I have found that many people left to make more money elsewhere, which we're all aware of every time we talk about contracts. That is always the first thing that we try to add back in. So we have an excellent staff here. So my findings on it were the majority of the people left to make money elsewhere. And every contract that we look at, it's the number one thing that we always talk about putting back in.
Thank you. We also had a comment directed to the board with respect to our last, bond issue. And the statement was that according to the bond that was passed under Dr. Olson, it was supposed to be done in 2 phases. The first one was issued. The second phase
only grades 5 through 8 got new laptops? How come grades 3 and 4 and 9 and 12 didn't get new? There was supposed to be dollars set aside and allocated for that, correct? There wasn't. I would like to address that. First off, what I have in front of me here, this big document, is the application that is put together by the Treasury Department, that it's all the legal work that is done by the attorneys. And back in 2013, when Dr. Olson was our superintendent, myself and Tracy Bartell, who I think was the vice president of the board at the time, went to Lansing with Dr. Olson and participated in this day-long procedure of putting this application together and making sure that everything was legally binding. So that is a public document that was put together for the bond. And then with that is a document that is called the bonding proposal that goes along with the application that gives the information that is put on the ballot when voters vote. And it was a $12,900,000 bond. And the question to the voters was, shall Richmond Community Schools, Macomb and St. Clair Counties, Michigan, borrow the sum of not to exceed $12,900,000 and issue its general obligation unlimited tax bonds, therefore, in one or more series for the purpose of acquiring, installing, and equipping instructional technology, erecting, furnishing, and equipping in addition to the high school for science classrooms, remodeling, furnishing, and refurnishing, equipping and re-equipping school facilities, purchasing school buses, constructing, equipping, developing, and improving playgrounds, and a new running track, and developing and improving sites. The bond, in fact, was 2 phases, or the legal term, 2 series. Each building had a series. The elementary schools, series 1, was legally for classroom technology, computers, printers, wireless devices, carts, and other peripherals, technology, infrastructure, cabling. Second series at the Lee was for classroom technology, computers, printers, wireless devices, carts, and other peripherals, technology, infrastructure, and cabling. And the amount for the first series was $772,767. For series 2 was $217,000. Richmond Middle School had 2 series. Same identifiers, the classroom technology, infrastructure, cabling, $902,267. Series 2, same information, $222,000. Richmond High School had 2 series. Series 1 with the same information, classroom technology, infrastructure, and cabling, $899,267. Series 2 at Richmond High School, same information as the other 2 buildings, $247,500. When a bond is passed, a Board of Education is legally responsible to do everything that is included in the bond. You must spend the money according to what is in here. You cannot do it otherwise. At Willow-Lee in Series 1, printers and copiers were purchased, desktop for teacher, staff, and lab, computer cards for classrooms K2, laptops 3 and 4, smart tables, peripherals, camera systems, security peripherals, switches, firewalls, virtual servers, media center sound system and projectors, cafeteria sound system and projectors, music room sound system, gym sound system. All of that was in Series 1. Series 2, 19 smartboard projectors were put into classrooms, Wi-Fi upgrades. In the middle school, Series 1, new copy machines and printers, laptops grades 5 through 8, camera systems, security, peripherals, replace the sound system in the gym. Technology, infrastructure, and cabling consisted of band and choir room sound system and projection, cafeteria sound system and projection, media center and IP conference room sound system and projection. In Series 2, the sound system in the gym was replaced. Grades 5 through 8 laptops were replaced. Upgrade Wi-Fi access points for more connections. At the high school, Series 1. Replaced all staff and office computers, copiers, replaced computer lab, purchased grades 9 through 12 laptops, camera security, virtual servers, switches, firewalls. Series 2, replaced the sound system at the stadium, replaced the sound system in the gymnasium, replaced the sound system in video and band and choir rooms, replaced the sound system in the cafeteria and the high school office conference room. Never to state that in the 2 series that money was supposed to be set aside for allocated for the other laptops is not accurate. Grades 5 through 8 were with money that was left in the second series. Laptops were purchased for grades 5 through 8 after a conversation between administration, superintendent, and Eric Lamont. We have purchased 3rd and 4th grade laptops outside of the bond money. We are purchasing new laptops for grade 9 this evening. A lot of money was spent to upgrade. There was a lot of work that needed to be done at Richmond schools, technology-wise. Money was spent exactly how it should have been. Money was spent legally, and to say otherwise is just a disservice to the board members that came before people sitting at this table who approved the bond and participated in all the spending of the money. Those people are Tracy Bartel, Rob Reindell, Andy Odekirk, Jeff Toit, Brian Henke, Dan Hill, Sarah Gillis, Dave Worth, Ryan Edberg, and every single person that sits at this table with me, including Mr. Walmsley. We do not ever not spend what we promised the voters that we're going to spend. And if anybody would like the information of what I just talked about, it's public information. That being said, we'll move on. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? We'll start virtually. Does it look like there's no one? Is there anyone in our audience tonight who would like to address the board?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. My question then is, last week you guys approved a curriculum director position. Why wouldn't you use that money to update laptops for the high school when we're going virtual and all these kids are having issues with their laptops being slow, not working, not connecting to the internet? And I know that firsthand because I worked in the media center, and those old laptops, they suck. So I would have, instead of getting a curriculum director, I know it's hard on the teachers and the principals to do that, but I would have rather have seen the money spent for technology for grades in the high school so that they could keep up with their studies. Thank you.
Would you state your name so that people in the virtual know who you are?
Nicolopoulos.
Thank you.
Oh, and Jessica, I do have that list of people that did quit if you'd like to see it.
Anybody else? Okay. Superintendent legislative update.
Not much is going on in the legislature. It's pretty much a quiet process right now until after the election. After the election, we'll be watching very closely during the lame duck session, which is oftentimes when legislation gets pushed through that may not always be well thought out in the best interest of, in this case, public education. In your packet, you have a thank you note from the ABM custodians. There was a thank you note for the hazard pay that the board submitted to all employees, as well as the contracted employees that we have, particularly ABM in this case. So I wanted you to have a copy of that one. And other than that, that's it.
Ryan, was there a Senate bill that passed about the Open Meetings Act? I forgot the number of it.
Yes, there was a Senate bill. It was passed. The governor signed it that allowed for virtual board meetings. Our board policy that you approve allows for it if, as long as there's an emergency circumstance, which is the emergency orders by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services would fall under. So yes, you are right. There was a bill that was passed regarding
Do the virtual meetings end? Are we not allowed to have virtual after this year?
As long as there is, and I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but basically as long as there is a basically a public health issue or public health concern that would prevent, it would be better for people to be virtual than in person. So we have the executive orders which were ruled unconstitutional. So a lot of some of the items that the governor had put in place, the legislators have passed, such as the virtual meetings for board meetings. That was signed, so you can start having them virtually, and it's no repercussions on it. It was actually retroactive to April 30th. So everything that a board did virtually, which under the Supreme Court was ruled unconstitutional, the governor to do that, the law was changed so that yes, everything that was acted upon is legal. So.
Do we have to go back face to face after the new year though? That's what I thought I understood, but maybe I'm wrong.
It's written as a phrase, and I don't know if there's an end date. I don't remember seeing the end date. It was written as long as there's like a public health issue or a public health concern. So if after the first of the year there's still an issue that they're wanting social distancing, wanting very few people in large crowd, we can continue.
Okay. Thank you.
No.
Good.
We're good.
Okay, next, items of interest for members of the board. Does anybody have anything?
I'd just like to say that Election Day is upon us, and I'd like to wish all of you running for re-election good luck. I'm very proud of the work that we've accomplished together. We haven't always agreed, but I think there's very little arguing that this district is the best it's ever been currently, and it gets better every day. I think the body of work speaks for itself. Anyone that's been paying attention understands the priorities that this board has had, the quality of education for every student, the experience that they have while getting that education, the priority of passing balanced budgets, which have been done for several years now, and the priority of the community. There's a notion out there that is incorrect that there's a gap, but we just passed a $39 million bond with the help of the community. And that was done with everybody in the organization last fall on Saturdays going door to door, including the people sitting at this table, to talk to the community. That was done in midweek lunches in our culinary arts room, meeting with the community to talk about it. That was done on Sunday afternoons in this auditorium for presentations. Your board members were here. The commitment and dedication speaks for itself. If you vote to change from that commitment and dedication, then you will probably get what you deserve. There are no personal agendas at this table. It is all about the students.
Anybody else? Okay, we're going to move on to our action items. First one, approval of confirmation of our extended COVID-19 learning plan, section 98A for the 2020-21 school year. That's what we just went through a few minutes ago. There's the sample resolution as well as that optional part that Brian pointed out to us.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the confirmation of the extended COVID-19 learning plan for the 2020-2021 school year as it was approved and presented in the attached documentation. This action reconfirms, 1, how the instruction will be delivered, 2, parents and or guardians had an opportunity for the public comment on the plan, and 3, reviews weekly two-way interaction rates as presented in the attached documentation. Furthermore, the board directs the superintendent to amend the extended COVID-19 learning plan as discussed with those amendments brought to the board to consider at the November 9th Board of Education meeting.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion?
So we're still gonna have Brian talk about the time that we just spoke about, that he's gonna speak to the REA, correct?
Yeah, that's what the,
Okay. So why are we approving just that we did what we needed to do, but we're
we
still
have
gonna,
to approve every month. We have to approve whatever our plan is at the time. That's why we got the,
so next month, we'll vote on those changes that we talked about.
next,
The next 30 days.
yes, the
Yes,
second
okay.
meeting
All
in
right.
November,
Thank you.
it will be the whatever time that Brian has worked out and the administrators and the teachers that we talked about, that will be in that meeting.
Okay.
So that we can go, or we can do it on the 9th.
Okay.
He could bring it to us on the 9th so that it goes into effect by the time we do at the end of November.
Okay.
You know, so it's sooner rather than later that it
Right.
gets.
Yep.
But had there been public comment from a parent or something, or, you know, some kind of issue, if the board felt that we wanted to address whatever that issue, that would be part of going into amending something. Everything looks good right now, but can we look into that issue and get
We're
it?
just voting on that we did what we were supposed to do.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And with the idea that we want to amend what we've been doing based on what the survey and all of that.
Thank you.
Okay. It's been moved and supported. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, approval of the contract with C-High Computer Products for laptops.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the purchase of 134 laptops from C-High Computer Products Incorporated for the total not to exceed $51,456 as authorized in the fiscal year 2021 general fund budget and outlined in the attached documentation.
Support.
Okay. It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Brian?
Just as the last board meeting, you budgeted 55,000. The difference between what that 51,464 or 454, excuse me, we will also be purchasing the cases and the protective equipment, and it remains under the $55,000 number.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll do a roll call. Chris?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Sherry?
Aye.
Sandy?
Aye.
Angela?
Aye.
Kyle?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. And that is it. We are adjourned at 8:38.